What does ancient wisdom, the divine feminine, and your voice have to do with finding greater balance, clarity, and soul connection? Stay tuned for a deep dive and an experience.
Welcome to Exploring the Mystical Side of Life with your host, Linda Lang.
Hi, this is Linda Lang from ThoughtChange.com. We are exploring the mystical side of life once again this week. If you enjoy our conversations, please make sure you subscribe, share with a friend. Today, I have Ileana Gilad with me. Ileana is a healing voice mentor, and she is the founder of the Voices of Eden, Ancient Wisdom and Healing Music Institute. Welcome, Ileana.
Thank you so much, Linda. I'm delighted to be here.
The Voices of Eden, Ancient Wisdom. Tell me what that's about.
I am a member of the Levite tribe, born on both my mother and father's side, which makes me a direct descendant of Moses, Aaron, and his older sister, the prophetess Miriam. This whole subject we're speaking about has nothing to do with religion or a dogma or a thought pattern or belief system. Without the prophetess Miriam, Moses would never have been born. The ancient commentaries actually tell a story of, when the Pharaoh decreed the murder of the firstborn Hebrew male babies. Amram, who was their father, who was head of the community, said, that ain't gonna happen. I'm gonna divorce my wife. My whole community will follow suit. There ain't gonna be any babies born. And Miriam comes to her father and said, your decree is a whole lot worse than Pharaoh's, because he decreed firstborn males. You're about to decimate your entire people. So listen to me, and listen to me good. Take your wife back. You'll have another child. It will be a boy, and it will be he who will bring our people and humanity into the next, into the next phase. And the father listens to the daughter, takes his wife back, and sure enough, Moses is born. And, you may have heard the story of the basket and the bulrushes. It was Miriam who took him down. She's archetype of feminine leadership, feminine power. And we don't know about her because that level of power needs no ratings. It doesn't need to be seen. It doesn't look at me, I'm the leader. Leader follower is what we've been living the last 3,000 years in our cognitive, masculine-oriented worldview. I'm not talking about man or woman. I'm using masculine in the sense of duality, yin yang, black white, whereas up until 3,000 years ago, so we lived in a matriarch, organically, holistic. And so as a prophetess, she would have seen what was about to occur, allowing for the shift to happen and for the ancient ways and that wisdom to remain intact under the radar. I've devoted my life and my career to the resurgence of this ancient feminine leadership and healing voice way to help us navigate, once again, 3,000 years later, we're in similar times of such human evolution and human change, that's at that same magnitude, maybe even more. And I feel very, very grateful to be able to tap into that wisdom and then to be of service to others. I'm like a modern day Miriam.
You work with the voice. The voice is something we all have access to, and it's such a powerhouse of energy, not just the words we speak and how we communicate, but the energy that comes through. How did you ever start working with the voice?
By listening to it.
Like really listening.
Yeah, to the source of it, behind the sound, in the silence behind it. Because we know, right, that the essence of all matter is vibratory. Everything is voice. We can sculpt sound waves. We can't see them. Our physical voice is the bridge between our inner world and our outer world. So that if you have issues with your voice, no matter how conscious you are, there's a disconnect there. And it's so relevant and prevalent these days. Everything's breaking down and such uncertainty that do you have like this nudge, like this inner voice, something that's nudging you, but you don't have physical words for it. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, so that, that's your true voice. All right. And then when you go to express that, if something actually comes out of your mouth, it's like night and day. If you even dare or have the courage to try and give voice to it, because it does not make sense. It's another paradigm. It does not come through the cognitive voice. What we're speaking now is cognitive. And what's so very, very different about this approach is that it's not a voice way. It's not sound healing. In 99.99999% of any approach today, even with healing sound and healing voice, we approach it from our cognitive place. We'll learn, different sounds, right? And then we'll use those to correct ailments or use such and such a hertz to get to this. So I've seen like the sounds of the chakras from do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, C, D, E, F, G, like bull hooey. That comes from a Western mentality of doing and putting things into systems. And there's not anything wrong with it, but that is coming from a place of doership. You're never going to get there ever because it's not there. You got to look where the answer is, and it's right where you are. How difficult is it to be who you already are? The only problem is we are so habituated, every human being alive, lifetime in, lifetime out of this, thinking. And then we believe what we think, and those are voices. That's vibratory too. So if you've meditated and you get your clarity and you're showing up and yes, you're going to speak your truth, and then you're in the situation and you don't, or it comes out sideways. Well, what is that? Because what do they think? And wait, that may not be spiritually correct. And I may be a bitch, or all these violent things that, being a conscious person, you don't want to admit that you have, but that's the problem, because you do have it. The more that we let it go, the more that we connect to the source of our power, the more that, caca will come up. That it's great news or bad news. It's bad news if you're not willing to really move forward. It's great news if you are, because you learn tools and you can easily let it go. And then that energy that's been held on is free for you to use however you want. And it will be reflected in your voice. You don't need to learn a tune or a pattern or a this or a that to get to. That's the ticket to hell.
The Western brain loves a process, right? They love it black and white. This happens, this is what you do, right? My world is very gray. It's not black and white because different people respond differently to different things at different times. So it just brings me back to how many, healing modalities or intuitive practice trainings that I've taken over the years where, people really struggle. They really struggle to listen to their own guidance because they want that process. They want to know, oh, this happens, I need to do this. The wisdom is within, comes from within. So you do that through the voice. It's not just the outer voice, the voice that we project, but also the inner voice.
The voice that comes out physically is the after effect of how you played your voice inside, how you're tuning your instrument. And, in the book, Emerge, Triumph, and Thrive Through Uncertainty, that's the whole point, and the exercises in there to point you back inside. It's not a cognitive book. Everything in there is for you to connect to the source of your own voice. living in Israel for those years, where it seems like there's a war every other day, and cynicism, and I didn't have any support, and I didn't learn a system. It really is just by listening inside. And, at a certain point, when I had gotten enough outer evidence, then it's like, what is this thing? I didn't even know how to talk. I didn't even know what it was. It was just listening. I call it the 3 C's, to have some, it's not a system, just to put a container of an ancient feminine and wisdom way of being your instrument and being able to connect your inner voice to your outer expression. The first C is you have to dare to stop long enough to connect with your inner voice, because it's not by doing something. There's nothing wrong with doing things. It's wonderful, but how's it working for you? Trying to figure out what's next. How do I use my time best? Like, is it working when you're honest with yourself? No, because the very thing that we're using to get our answers is the very problem. Just be who you are. How difficult is that? You already are that. Just stop looking in the wrong direction. And that's what these tools help you to catch yourself when you're in the wrong direction, to connect back to where you are. I made a workshop, and the thing that really motivates me, that's helping me, is there's an exercise in there, and it's with this healing sound and voice and music. 10 years ago, I was living in Israel, and I drove down to the ancient site of the parting of the seas, and I pitched a tent, and I slept there overnight, and at dawn got up and composed and recorded this piece. It is so powerful. The place is so powerful, and it's how we lived in the past. It's how this was used. Leaders would go to the sacred spaces and to temples and avail themselves of special applications of wordless voice and rhythm that would help them to bypass the intellect, cognitive mind, that would bring them into their higher mind, to that inner clarity, and connect the two. And they would retreat. They would take the time out. Without doing that, we're just left to our habit. Nothing wrong with that, but you get the same thing. And they weren't afraid of the stuff that would come up, because they would avail themselves of the prophetesses, and the healing musicians. They were leaders, and the women, they were leaders of society. They were wealthy landowners. We don't know of this today. It's been forgotten. But they would welcome what comes up, because they knew that by availing themselves of that support, that they would get the clarity, and then they could move forward and, make the best decisions and have the clarity as to what to do next. And this was just practice. So I'm very excited, because this is after 3,000 years, we have, a little emergence from the depths of, the well of wisdom from these ancient ways, and allowing that to resurge for modern problem solving today.
It's time.
Yeah.
Do you have any guidance that you can give our listeners if they're feeling a little maybe insecure with having that connection with themselves, or perhaps a little misalignment even?
Yeah, well, you know what? How about being kind with yourself? How about allowing it? What's happening is you might find yourself feeling the need to do something, or, you want to move forward. But I think part of that wanting to move forward and then feeling so ashamed secretly or lacking because you don't know what to do, and then you push towards something, or maybe you start something and then you stop because you're terrified inside or really anxious or panicked. And then the opposite extreme is, why even bother? Because the world is coming to an end and it's not even worth it, because I can't count on anything and there's not a God. Nobody speaks about it, but that, my dears, is absolutely why I am on this podcast, because nobody speaks about it. And I am, because there's nothing wrong. Birth is messy. It's bloody. It is not comfortable, but there's nothing wrong with you. You're moving forward if you will allow yourself to stop and be where you are and allow for the pain. I work with, over the last 30 years, more than 10,000 healing professionals at this point, like healing professionals, whether you're a coach, whether you're a therapist, whether you're a healer, whether you're a sound healer, whether you're a social worker, whether you're a nurse, we're the kind of people, we're there for everyone else, and the conscious ones, who are interested in the mysticism and spiritual, boy, we can, there's so much ego that comes up in there.
There can be, that's for sure.
Because I'm there to help the other. But that's still from the place of I'm the doer, I'm disconnected. And so when the caca hits the fan, as it is now, it's normal that it would be very disconcerting, but it's also an opportunity for you to really slow down and go deeper. It's not about more, it's about less. It's not about fast, because you got to get it, because your world is going to fall apart. Your world is going to fall apart if you insist on staying and continuing to do the same things that you've been doing before, even spiritually. The killing and the death comes from not being willing to let go. It's time to let go. For whatever reason, I'm so grateful. I've been willing to, when push comes to shove, when I don't know what to do, I go, this is my tip. I go for what gives me the opportunity of the next step. I was more terrified of getting to the end of my life and not knowing why I was alive than the terror of jumping off into the unknown. I saw the writing on the wall. I saw in another 20, 30 years, things are going to be falling apart. I thought, well, if I make my changes now, then when that happens, I'll already be on the other side. I had no support. People thought I was absolutely nuts, but I was more terrified of getting to the end of my life and looking good, even to myself, even spiritually, but inside of myself, not knowing why I was alive. Then why was I born?
You talked about that urge to kind of move forward, to evolve and to create some change, but that can be sometimes the head talking, not necessarily the heart. So is there a way that people can discern if it's really their heart or their soul that's urging them as compared to their head?
That is such a great question. Actually, that workshop, there's an exercise to help you get that clarity so that you can discern, like, how do I know what's clear and what's not? How do I know if that's my head talking or if that's my inner guidance talking? And in order to really have that clarity, well, there's a process, and that's exactly it. It's so great, and it comes from, how? By first stopping. Because if we don't stop first, that's that first seed, the connection. Then we're reacting, and nothing wrong with that either. But this approach is a means for you to gain control over your voice instead of your voice controlling you. It's a means by which you become the conductor, because you're the instrument. Your voice is already there, but like in an orchestra, if your instrument's not tuned, what's going to come out is dissonant.
Beautiful metaphor, and something I think that we can all really grasp, because our mind really does direct us, and unconsciously so often, right? But there's always that little inner feeling or a knowing that something's not quite right, or something is right, depending on circumstances, right?
I'm motivated right now, if you would like. I'm motivated to just compose a little something.
Oh, absolutely.
to be clear, this is not a singing modality. It's not a drumming modality. If you watch, there are more than 300 videos on the Voices of Eden Ancient Israel YouTube channel. And I have sung into the drum for years, though it's not singing into the drum. And there are people today which teach singing into the drum, and it's not that. It's what I'm going to be doing right now is because Linda has been so clear and connected with what she's speaking about. And it's just coming, like, how do we really connect? And I did, by my speaking of that workshop and the parting of the seas, that there's always a focus. So that's, and so this will be our music, right? And it's never the same. And what I'm doing is I'm going to connect to the source of the sound and the silence behind it. And I'm going to listen. And there's always a focus. So Linda, I'm going to ask you to, in one word, as an experience from what you were asking, what would you like to experience and have the listeners experience that would be of service to them? And then that's what I'm going to take as the focus. And we'll see what happens. And then it will be our music for that.
Okay, I would choose soul resonance.
Well, you can focus on your soul resonance without knowing what that means. I don't know what it means. I have no clue. But that's the, that place, inside, that's where I'm going to connect to. And then with this approach, which again is not a singing approach. You can use this for making a presentation. You can use it for just being at ease with yourself. It doesn't even have to do with your voice. Right? I'm going to be practicing these tools as I'm composing this music. And the result, our medical research that's been conducted upon this approach actually shows that it's in the silence after the sound where its power is most potent. So when I finish, we'll take another few moments of silence. It's like throwing a pebble in a pond where there's resonance. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can you hear it now? Like,
Yeah, it's to me it feels like a drop, a single drop that goes, and it's like silent and peaceful, but it goes out and out and out.
that's beautifully said. Yeah. And if you'll allow yourself to stay open, that will continue. I mean, this whole approach, it's about listening. It's not about expressing. When you listen, when you really, really connect inside, you'll know what to say at the right time. It'll come from the right place. The minute you start thinking about what to say or sing or do, you're back in your head. The more you listen inside and then trust what you hear and act upon that, it'll take you to really great places, and that will develop such confidence in yourself, and it will bring good. Your answers are right where you are, not in any other person, place, or thing.
And this has nothing to do with what your voice sounds like.
We are vibratory. And when we connect to the source of the sound, you hold the entire power of the cosmos in your hands. This is like a meta method. It's really it's a means of self-inquiry, really. Other methods, you're learning ways to do things or toning in this to get to a certain state where that's based on the premise that you've got to do something to get somewhere. And from the get-go, you're coming from a place of being separate from the all. And that's just not true. There's nothing wrong. You're wonderful. You're whole already. The answers are inside. They're not outside. They're not in a technique. They're not in your voice. And I think that's the really basic thing I want to leave here, is that it's not about your voice. You are your voice. You are the instrument of the cosmos, not you're doing something to get connected to the cosmos. Can you see the difference in that?
Absolutely.
It's a matter of consciousness. It's a matter of what you're identifying with. Voices of Eden, this ancient way, what it helps me with, it's kind of like a bridge to help you connect to your inner clarity inside, and then have a bridge. It's like the tools are the bridge that allow you to connect that inner clarity that's beyond your cognitive mind to your cognitive expression, whatever that is. But it's not by your cognitive expression to get to that. It doesn't work that way. So if you're trying to figure this out, stop, because you won't. And if you don't get it and go, who is that lady? What is she talking about? She's out of her mind. You're right. I am. I'm totally out of my mind.
There you go. It's so much like letting creativity flow through you rather than what creative thing can I do?
Exactly.
And how different would the world be if we could all connect to that place?
Well, yeah, that's why it's called Voices of Eden, because imagine what happens as each one of us in their own time. Imagine what happens as we each dare to stop and listen to ourselves, and really hear our voice, and that we dare express that. And we hear each voice. There are no two that are alike. And that forms a unified whole, because there's nothing we have in common except from that place we come from and go back to, but then we hear each voice that forms that unified whole. And to me, that's Eden. And that's why it's called Voices of Eden. It's a living experiment of creating Eden on earth, one authentic voice at a time. What beautiful times we live in, what beautiful opportunity we have to really connect to yourself. If you do dare to stop, yeah, you will meet your discomfort, but that's not a problem. It actually, your vulnerability isn't your weakness, it's your strength. And imagine that you could actually use the uncertainty and the, disruption and the just not having any clue that could actually be the greatest gift that you could have happen to you. If you could use that to propel yourself forward and move through these times, actually thrive through them, and emerge really, really triumphant.
Eliana, if the listeners would like to learn more, how can they do that?
Well, you can go to voicesofeden.com. What I would suggest is go to voicesofeden.com/book, okay? Because there you'll find the book and you'll find a short trailer there that I recorded in one of these ancient sites. It's very potent, very, very healing, like in a minute. and the book itself is just, provides a means to connect with yourself.
Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much for the beautiful, potent work that you do, and for giving voice, to sanity. It's important.
And thank you for listening to this week's edition of Exploring the Mystical Side of Life. You will find all of our conversations on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Come visit me at thoughtchange.com. Pick up your copy of Learning to Listen and see what energy medicine can do for you. That's it for this week. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.